You are now locked into the Scouting Room, the home of authentic, fun, and unfiltered NFL and college football content. We will bring you film breakdown and analysis, hot topic discussions, and in-depth NFL draft prospects, the best place for it all. So sit down, have a drink, and let's talk football in the Scouting Room. What is up, people? Welcome in to the Scouting Room. I am the founder, creator, and host of this illustrious YouTube channel, Damian Parson. I am a senior draft analyst over with the Draft Network and part of the co-host team of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. And guys, thank y'all so much for tapping in with your boy. Listen, I asked for just three things: like, comment, subscribe, man. You know, show some love to a growing channel. I'm trying to bring you guys just unfiltered football content. We're going, like I said, film breakdowns, all of that good stuff. Because I promise you, I can't do any of this without my guy, my brother. He's family to me, Daniel Harms. Let's get him up on the screen now. Daniel Harms. Dan, what's up, man?
What's going on, man? Like, this is great. I love the intro. It's great. It's fantastic. Listening to your voice just kind of like calms everybody down. And since we're recording this in the morning, I've got some coffee with me, and we're gonna have some fun talking about ball, man. It's gonna be great.
No, 100%, man. I got some water. I had iced coffee. Like, I've been up since like 5:30 this morning. I mean, that's how hype I've been.
Me too.
About this, you know what I mean? So I got some iced coffee. You know, iced coffee maker here. Got some iced coffee this morning. Made that before getting the kiddo out to daycare and then start tackling things. But guys, you already know what we're talking about. You see it on the ticker. NFL schedule reaction. Dan, we were wait. It was a week. We had to wait a week. Crazy enough. Like, it, you know what I mean? Like they played with us a little bit and then they pushed it back. But getting the schedule, man, and that week one, we're going to talk about some of those intriguing matchups. Dan, I think for me, we got to start with your boys, right? The reigning, defending Super Bowl champion, those Kansas City Chiefs, hosting the Baltimore Ravens, a team that they faced off with in the AFC Championship game, a game that was very tough. It was a back-and-forth game, and there was a game that arguably if the Ravens didn't shoot themselves in the foot, they might have walked out of there at home going to the Super Bowl. What's your initial thoughts of having to deal with Lamar Jackson, now Derrick Henry, and this team week one to start the season?
You know, honestly, I'm excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch this game, not only because we got the AFC Championship game where that back and forth, the high scoring early, and then the defenses were like, no more scoring. Then we had the adjustments at halftime. Mike McDonald is going to be a very interesting talking point because he's not there anymore. How is that defense going to look in week one preparing for Patrick Mahomes with new weapons? You don't have MVS anymore. Rashee Rice is going to get suspended. Most likely, he's not going to be playing, but you've got Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. And then on the flip side, you lose a guy like Willie Gay who you could trust to spy one-on-one. You could trust him to spy at least a little bit with with Lamar Jackson. You don't have that anymore. And what's the difference going to be? The run game, obviously, we're probably going to see pretty early because they ran away from that in the second half of that football game. And basically, it was Lamar throwing one-on-one passes down the sideline that didn't work to a whole extent. You also don't have L'Jarius Sneed. So a lot of adjustments. But starting off the NFL season with this game really shows you, at least in my opinion, what the NFL wants and how it should stack up the rest of the season for the NFL.
Well, 100%. I'm with you. I think, man, it's a situation where, you're Lamar Jackson, and I feel like me and Keith, we were sitting in, we were actually, that was the week of Mobile. So we were actually in Mobile at I think it was, I forget the name of the spot, but it was like a, food spot that the Senior Bowl uses and everything. And we were, eating food, watching the game, and we kept saying, Lamar, run the ball. Lamar, run the ball. Like, it was just something that we kept talking about because with Lamar Jackson, it just felt like he was trying to prove a point. It felt like he was trying to prove I'm a pocket passer. Yes, he played well from the pocket last year with Todd Monken and getting away from an offense that I heard they wanted to get away from for some time, from Greg Roman's run-heavy offense. So for me, it was like, yeah, I think it was spot on, like perfectly done through the season. and getting a Zay Flowers and everything like that.
Yeah.
Now, Mark Andrews wasn't fully healthy either, so that kind of hurt the passing offense. There seems to be a little bit of a chemistry thing between him and Rashad Bateman that I think needs to be ironed out, because if they can iron that out, Dan, it'll be a great situation for them to
Yeah.
have that extra weapon. No OBJ this year, right? You got Nelson Aguilar, which is, he's supposed to be in the slot. So I think this is a team that should still be looking at wide receivers come preseason and post camp. See who gets cut and bring some more talent in, and maybe even try to make a trade for someone if someone's available. But Lamar, I think this is a game where he can come in and understand, I didn't play my best. I didn't play my brand of football. And then I saw reports that he's dropped weight, because like the last 2 years he bumped up to like 215, 220, still explosive as ever.
Yeah.
But it's like now he's back down to probably 205. And it's like, yeah, I can't remember who was talking about it. One of the players during camp was like, yeah, he's back to that like pre-slim Lamar speed again. And it's like, that's terrifying, because you get that read option, that mesh point between him and Derrick Henry, King Henry. And then also King Henry is going to be such an X factor for this team, because while Ryan Tannehill was a solid quarterback, he was never a star quarterback. He was never a guy that has ever been an MVP, not let alone 2-time MVP. He's never carried a team. Derrick Henry carried that team for those years that they were able to make the playoffs and AFC Championship game, Dan. And now with Derrick Henry being in the backfield with the Lamar Jackson, that is one of the most frightening thoughts for a defense, because your backside end has to keep contained on Lamar, which lessens the box count in terms of getting into the action. Because now, think about how that impacts a George Karlaftis, right? If Derrick Henry gets rolling on inside zone and stuff like that early in the first quarter, and he's got 50 yards rushing on the first drive, now they're dictating the pace, they're controlling the clock. I got to stop this. I got to jump in and make the effort. And you do that at the wrong moment. Now Lamar Jackson pulls it out of the mesh point, and now he's hitting the edges, and that's where he's dangerous, right? So I'm excited for this game. You have some young players. More than likely see Nate Wiggins, the cornerback out of Clemson, being, especially in their nickel and dime sets. I expect to probably see either Brandon Stevens, who played outstanding last year at corner, probably click either him or Marlon Humphrey kick into the slot. And then you have Nate Wiggins outside, but also Trenton Simpson. No Patrick Queen, because he signed a big deal to go to, to take a step and go over same division to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'm excited for this game. I think it's the NFL knew what they were doing, giving us this matchup week, the opening week. But then it's crazy, though, as well, Dan, because when you look at the schedule, and I'm looking at the schedule here, and what's wild to me, because I don't think they've ever done this. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But we have another game Friday night, right? Like back-to-back games to open the season. This isn't typical for the NFL, right? It's going to be on Peacock. I know there's a lot of talk about all the TV stuff. I get it, guys. I understand. But I already have Peacock, so I have all these streaming things. I don't really care. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really – I don't have to spend any extra money. I already had them. But, like, you get Green Bay and the Philadelphia Eagles in Brazil. Friday night, 8:15 Eastern time. Let's talk about that matchup really quick.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting dynamics we're going to see now. Kellen Moore takes over as the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. And there's a lot of, how are we going to see this offense run, right? Like, they've been more of a not check the football down to your running back offense. And what does Kellen Moore like to do with their passing offense? They'd like to get guys involved in the passing game a little bit more out of the backfield. So now you don't have Jason Kelce. How is that going to change the tush push? That's the big thing everyone wants to talk about. How is it going to change that? How is it going to change the run dynamic with, honestly, Jalen Hurts, who I think last year we saw some of the warts of Jalen Hurts can start to kind of funnel its way into the offense. And early on, they were fine, and then we started to see some miscommunications on offense. And throwing the ball over the middle of the field has been kind of a bugaboo for him. So that's going to be like two hallmarks of this offense, if I'm not mistaken. Kellen Moore wants to throw the football over the middle of the field. He wants to check the ball down. And those are two things that Jalen Hurts typically has struggled with in his NFL career. So you obviously have the two guys on the outside. They're going to make up for most everything down the field. But Saquon Barkley with this offensive line should be magic. It should be magic. Like, we should be able to see him and Jalen Hurts find this great chemistry and get this offense going. The opposite side for me is what's going to happen on defense, because we saw last year down the middle, down the spine of this defense, linebacker and safety, and really at cornerback at times late in the season, where was everybody? There was nobody there. Like they felt like every team could throw the football on them, and in comes Jordan Love in the first game of the season off of the way he finished last year. It's hard to have that kind of performance, especially for a guy who sat for 4 years. Like that was an impressive up and down season for him. So coming in, playing some young players in the secondary against newly defense coordinator Vic Fangio's defense, learning the system. How is that going to look? I'm really, really excited for this game.
Without question, right? Like, because I think, like you said, the Jordan Love thing, and you think about Dontavian Wicks, you think about having both tight ends they drafted last year healthy. Luke Musgrave, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't know why I'm blanking on the
Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Kraft, yes. The way he stepped up last year. Then you have Jaden Reed, like Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, like, you know, and you don't have Aaron Jones anymore, but then you bring in Josh Jacobs. You still have A.J. Dillon. But here's the X factor for me in that run game is Marshawn Lloyd as the pass catcher, the space player, and, again, giving Jordan Love. What Matt LaFleur was able to do is simplify the game. He gives him easy looks. He allows him to get into a rhythm, and I think he does that early in the game, right? And what I love is what Marshawn Lloyd is going to be able to do and bring to this offense. Man, it's going to be so much fun to watch. And again, that linebacker situation for the Philadelphia Eagles, you got with Nakobe Dean, and we talked about on Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, me and my guy Keith Sanchez, the tie between Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is like looking in the mirror. You know what I mean? They just went to two different schools. One went to SEC, the other went to ACC, right? Georgia and Clemson. But the size, the athleticism questions, the same issues in terms of their profile, they're similar, almost identical. And now those probably be the two starting backers, or eventually will be the two. I want to see what happens with that. But if you get both of these guys covered, Jalen Carter is going to be big on the interior defense line. We saw how dominant of a force he could be early and often in his career last year, starting out the season. And Jordan Davis, I saw a tweet. It was like Vita Vea didn't have a Pro Bowl or didn't take that big step until year 3-4, and they start, Quinnen Williams and different interior defensive linemen. I think Jordan Davis is set up for a big year, Dan. And guys, let me tell you something. If it happens that way, good luck. Because if you have a defensive line that can keep those type of instinctive backers in Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter Jr., if they can keep those guys clean, listen, like I said, good freaking luck. You hear me? Good luck, because it's not going to happen, and you're going to struggle with trying to, like, those guys be able to scrape and get to their spots and make impact plays in zone coverage and everything. But here, this is the other thing, too. They drafted back-to-back defensive backs, right? Yeah. Get Quinyon Mitchell, get Cooper DeJean, bring it in Vic Fangio, a guy who ran, I think, 70, maybe 70+% zone with Miami last year. That's going to be a really good fit for them because James Bradbury wasn't good. We saw some good moments from Elias Ricks and Keely Ringo. We know what big play Darius Slay is, right? But what is going to happen with these young guys? That's 4 young defensive backs that's going to be jostling for playing time. So it's going to be really interesting because with zone, you have to communicate well. And if you put too many young guys on the field at the same time in the secondary, there's, talking about passing off concepts and I'm here, you're there, you get this guy, switch releases, stuff like that, Dan. Guys, like that could be a little bit of an issue early on, especially week 1. And that Matt LaFleur, will be able to pinpoint and really stress them, especially those young linebackers, because you got 2 6'5" athletic tight ends stretching vertical, and they can get you matched up one-on-one. I'm trying to throw that alley-oop pass to them.
Yeah, what I'm interested about this, like you said, you want to move guys. You want to move those secondary players, those young players, to get them off their spot. So we're probably going to see a lot of this outside zone look with Jordan Love coming off the boot and then throw it down the spine of the defense. Get them moving, and that's when you really start to get those play action shots, and you can still run the ball. And there's a lot of talk about Josh Jacobs. Last year wasn't very good. He wasn't very efficient. I'm going to attribute most of that to some injuries. I think that he was playing with some stuff before he got injured later in the season. His calf injury, I think, is the big thing people were talking about. But this offense is going to be brilliant for him because this offensive line has been nothing but good consistently ever since I don't even know. You can go back to before the Aaron Rodgers days. Like they've just been consistently cranking out offensive linemen. When you can get a guy like Max Mitchell coming in like the 5th, 6th, 7th round and coming, oh look, we have found another starter. It doesn't really matter. They continuously find players to bring in and to start for them. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see what these guys do in this week 1 matchup with the young players on both sides. They're two very young teams. At least the Eagles are starting to reset that defense, and we see what the Packers did over the past couple of seasons. We're just going to draft wide receivers and tight ends and just keep throwing bodies at it. And look, it works out sometimes.
No, 100%. We got 2 more week 1 games to get into. We then got some middle of the season, late season games we really want to highlight. Rematch, I think, from week 1 last year, the Colts and the Texans. And I remember that game. Anthony Richardson was balling, right? That was, I think, that might have been the concussion game where he like kind of lackadaisically went to celebrate in the end zone. Someone, defender pushed him late. He rolled up, hit his head, and everything. Still jumped up, celebrated, and everything. And then I think he played again, like the next drive. Then they pulled him out. It was like, wait, you might be concussed, bro. Like, so, but he, the run action, like everything that he brings to the table. We saw the explosive flashes. But he's got to deal with that man that developed throughout the season, C.J. Stroud, who now has Nico Collins, who, developed and took that big step. Not only Nico Collins, but then he also has Stephon Diggs, our guy, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. Like, I think they drafted Cade Stover, which I like. I actually like that pick.
Yes, they did.
It may not be a fantasy pick, but for this team that wants to run 12, runs, the wide zone, get the run game going, and he's a big, strong guy who's really good blocker, but also is a reliable contested catch, high traffic area pass catcher as a tight end in the middle of the field. I like that. Now, Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry. Derek Stingley Jr., Will Anderson Jr. Like, they drafted Kalen Bullock, brought in Kamari Lassiter. This team has gotten better on both sides of the ball. And then you got Adonai Mitchell. They improved the offensive line in Indy, but also Laitu Latu. So when you see this matchup week 1, how do you feel about it?
This is one of those highlight moments for young quarterbacks, right? Like this is what we want to see. We want to see the young guys going at it. And you can easily argue that Anthony Richardson might have had a CJ Stroud-esque performance had he stayed healthy. I think we saw he was all over the place. What Shane Steichen has done, showing that he can not only work with a guy like Jalen Hurts, who I think is a more limited runner than people give him credit for. He's much more of a straight line guy, a powerful physical guy. Anthony Richardson is a next level athlete. So getting him with that offense is like, you can do so much more with the run game because he's going to make guys miss. He's going to bowl guys over. But then you let him back there in the pocket off those play action passes. It's lights out. You get some speed guys down the field. He can just throw it wherever he wants to. So that's what I want to see from Anthony Richardson come out. I want to see them light it up. I know they want to run the football. I get that. In this matchup, I think you need to take it to CJ Stroud and the Texans. You need to throw the ball down the field. Show them that they're not here just to run the ball and grind it out a little bit. Show that you're here to play. And on the opposite side, like the Texans made moves to compete now. They saw a window open. Like they smashed through that window last year. And when you're able to, I think you bring in Joe Mixon, who, for everything that he's kind of dealt with in Cincinnati, some injuries, it looks like he's lost a little bit of explosiveness. He can still run that wide zone offense that they want to run. And that's the big thing. I love Damian Pierce, but it's been his struggles running wide zone and running zone in general are noted. That's why they brought in Devin Singletary last year. They still couldn't run the ball, but we saw Singletary not struggle with reading and finding those gaps in cutback lanes, something that for whatever reason Pierce just had issues doing. And I don't know what's going to happen with him, but I'm hoping that he goes somewhere maybe where he can play a little bit more gap power, where he's just able to get downhill and bowl guys over. But you have a hole at right tackle. They draft Blake Fisher, who I loved. coming out of Notre Dame. I think he is a plug-and-play right tackle in the NFL.
Yeah.
Pairing with Laramie Tunsil is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And we know this wide receiver room is ready to go right now. And when you have all three, honestly, you've got guys at all three levels because I think all three can still win deep. But now you take that off of Stephon Diggs' plate. You say, don't worry about winning deep. We're going to bring you in. You're going to be a short to intermediate player because we can still threaten with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. You worry about underneath where we're going to create more space for you, where we necessarily couldn't do that in Buffalo over the past couple of years with the lack of speed. Because much like MVS, who just signed in Buffalo, Gabe Davis is not an explosive speed guy. He will get there eventually. And that's something that I think we're going to see in Houston, where Nico Collins is more explosive. Tank Dell, obviously more explosive, can win vertically down the field. So there's going to be so much more that they're going to be able to do from an intermediate winning quickly perspective. But CJ Stroud showed last year that he's a supercomputer processor. He sees defenses at an elite level already. What he was doing last year is not normal. I do not want to make it out to seem like, oh yeah, guys can just come into the NFL and do what he did. No, like if you go back and watch some of the interview processes from after the season, you start to realize how special of a processor this man is, combined with the elite accuracy to all levels of the field. That is a dangerous quarterback. Just kind of airdropped into an AFC that's loaded with offensive talent. So this matchup between him and Anthony Richardson is going to be one you don't want to miss opening week.
No, 100%. Like both of these teams, and I love the fact that the Colts, and then we'll move on to the next game, which is the Lions and Rams. And then we'll go to some of the other games we were going to talk about. But I love what the Colts were able to do, getting Laitu Latu. You know that you had to deal with Will Levis. You had to deal with Trevor Lawrence. And, of course, the bad man himself, C.J. Stroud. Laitu Latu is a bucket getter. He can go back there, get after the quarterback, and that's what you need, that fast, quick twitch, explosive guy off the edge who has an array of moves, who is so detail-oriented. So I'm excited for that. But the Lions and Rams, right? And this was a game, I believe they faced each other in the postseason.
Yes, they did.
And, the Lions came out on top. They won that game. And, both teams super talented. I'm so excited for this game because for Matthew Stafford, I think losing to the team that drafted you, even though you won, the trade happened, you lost to the quarterback, that they traded, traded you for essentially the swap for Jared Goff and everything like that in the postseason. I'm expecting Matthew Stafford to be ready to rock and roll for this game, Dan. Like I'm so excited for what is about to come because I think with him, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, year 2 of Puka Nacua. I think they need to get the tight end, situation going with Tyler Higbee. Davis Allen's a guy that doesn't get a lot of talk out of Clemson, but he's athletic and he's more of a pass catcher than a true run blocker. But he can make plays in the middle of the field. And of course, Cooper Kupp. Then they got DeMarcus Robinson, still got Tutu Atwell. It's a receiver room that I think that they can still add talent to. But they went and got Jonah Jackson, a Detroit Lion interior offensive lineman, to help with that run game because that's what Jonah's going to really thrive at, right? The power runs, pulling out, pin pull action, getting them lead blocking. Kyron Williams, I think there was a clip of the running backs coach and Kyron Williams watching tape in the film room of Jonah Jackson. They watched him kind of pull out and smack the defensive back or a linebacker, and they just both looked at each other like, okay, this is the guy we're getting. Love to see it, right? So I'm excited for this matchup, man, because and I think this is going to be it depends on who's starting at corner for Detroit, right? Because you do have Carlton Davis, Emmanuel Mosley, but then you bring in 2 rookies in terms of Ennis Rakestraw on the second round and Terrion Arnold in round 1. Do we see two rookie starters, or do we see one of the rookies starting? Either way, that assignment of who's going to guard Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua is going to dictate this game. Because if you lose track of either one of these guys, then you start having to shift coverage, which is going to open up the other guy, and it's just like you start ping-ponging, and it's like both of them have 150 yards. You know what I mean? It's just like, especially if the run game's going, and now you're in trouble, man. But for me, I'm excited for this matchup. Aiden Hutchinson, and then I tweeted it out. Alaric Jackson, undrafted, free agent, left tackle. Listen, the Rams got them one, man. 6'7". For some reason, he's listed at 285 on the Rams website. There's no way he's 285. But I
No.
put it in my tweet anyway because I'm like, listen, you take up that complaint with the Rams. But man, watching his tape, like long arms, strong, fluid hips, and nimble feet, like this offensive line is going to be good for them. I'm excited to see just what this matchup is going to bring, Dan.
Yeah, this is again, we get to see Matthew Stafford back with the playing against the Detroit Lions. Like this is what dreams are made of. Like we always wanted to see it. We got to see it in the postseason, and we get to start the NFL season off with it. And when you look at the Rams, they really did a makeover. Sean McVay did a fantastic job of going back to the well after getting Kyren Williams and now drafting Blake Corum, saying we can't just run zone. We can't just be a zone predominant offense. They brought in this gap, this power concept offense, and they said, all right, we're going to revamp it. We're going to run the ball downhill, and we are going to get our playmakers in space. That's exactly what he does well. But when you bring the offensive line now that's got more physicality to it, like you talked about, you bring in Jonah Jackson and Larry Jackson, and you can actually physically continue to dominate players on defensive players on the offensive line and keep going. That's what you have with Blake Corum and Kyren Williams. These guys can run power. They can run downhill. You don't want them running sideline to sideline quickly. You want them to go straight down the field where they can use their short area quickness, their burst, and their elite lateral agility to get yards down the field. So that's what I'm interested to see going forward. The tight end room is whatever. I mean, they didn't really add to it. Tyler Higbee's fine, but I would have liked to see them add some more speed at wide receiver. I like Jordan Whittington. He should be a fun player to use in some of those different roles, jet sweeps, like they used him at Texas. Just get him moving and into space because, Sean McVay does that so well. And then when you look at their defense, you and I were talking about this last week. They just want guys that will tear the roof off of anything. First step, just motor on home. You draft two guys out of Florida State that maybe aren't the best in terms of pure pass rush moves. I think Jared Verse has a lot more in his bag than Braden Fisk, but both are going to work and work and work. And you pine them with Kobe Turner. You have this defensive line room that's just going to continuously get after it. Really good first steps. They're quick off the line of scrimmage. And then you get those guys that live in the backfield. That typically translates to the NFL. We've seen it over the course of the last maybe 5-6 years, these defensive tackles. I think Braden Fisk, while didn't really break out until maybe this last year at Florida State, is going to be one of those guys that does live in the backfield because his first step. And then the Lions, I'm interested at this position. We can kind of talk about the Jared Goff contract right now. You back yourselves into a wall a little bit with Jared Goff, who I like. I love his arm talent. We know about his pocket presence. Maybe it's not the best, but he runs the offense at an extremely high level. What's going to happen next year when Ben Johnson finally says, okay, I'm going to take a head coaching job, right? Like he doesn't come back. How is that transition going to work? So I like Jared Goff. This offense is still going to be very, very good. They're going to run the ball well. This year, we are going to see the evolution and the next step of Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to take off. And this game, starting off against a front that's very young, it is very young. And I think that they're going to still be able to run at the Rams and still build that play action game. But this is where we should see, in my opinion, the transformation of a 3-down back in Jahmyr Gibbs, because I like David Montgomery, and he's fine for short yardage and in the end zone. But everywhere else, you need to be maximizing Jahmyr Gibbs because speed, yes, you have Jameson Williams, who this is a make or break year for Jameson Williams. They have to be able to get him more involved, not just from a speed perspective, but a route tree, a route concept perspective. I thought he took some good steps last year, but this is the year for that. But you can really maximize the speed elements with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams on the field. So these two guys, I just want to see a ton of points because I still don't believe both defenses are going to be fantastic. What's going to happen now with Chris Shula taking over as a defense coordinator? I think Raheem Mostert squeezed a lot out of that defense last year, as much as he possibly could, because they overperformed. So he's going to have to come in week 1 playing against the Lions. And how is he going to adjust to young players? How is he going to get the most out of them? So I'm very interested to see what they do from that perspective. But this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it is. And Ben Johnson is so good at, what I love about his offenses, and then we'll move on to the middle of the season games. Ben Johnson will use 11 personnel in such a variety of ways
Yeah.
where and it's not just to pass. Typically, you see guys come out 11 personnel,
No, it's fun.
shotgun, pistol, 3 wide receivers, tight end, and the running back. And you're like, okay, they're in shotgun. It's either going to be inside zone or pass, right? Like it looks a little predictable. No, they'll come out in 11 personnel, but you got Amara St. Brown tight to the line of scrimmage. You got tight end in line. You got bunch, you got the outside receivers also tightly in line, kind of some nasty, reduced splits. You're under center with the running back in the backfield, so you get the best of both worlds. You get that play action game, right? You get the actual passing attack. They run especially with Amara St. Brown, they run some jet sweep motion stuff with them, some jet handoffs, everything. Like it's such a concerted effort to make you think from a defensive standpoint, period. Second level and third level, your eyes are trying to find the ball because it's so many moves, and they're so good, just with motion and Sean McVay's great at that too. I think it was in that same game. Like
I was about to say, yeah, like you look at the wide receivers, Cooper Kupp, Demarcus Robinson, and Puka Nacua. They can all block, they can all run routes, they can all do a bunch of different things, and they both, from 11 personnel perspectives, will just say, "Hey, good luck figuring out what's coming at you."
100%. And listen, we've talked about these week 1 matchups. Let's move on. We got the Green Bay Packers week 7. Green Bay Packers versus the Houston Texans. You're getting Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud. What are your initial thoughts on this game? Because I think this is like middle of the season. I remember last year the Houston Texans going into week 9, they were like 4-4. I think that was that Cincinnati Bengals game. They had the game-winning drive, and that was what really kickstarted them going forward, man. So how do you think about, or what are your initial thoughts about Green Bay versus Houston in week 7?
Yeah, we've talked about both these teams already, funny enough, but that also shows you how we want to see these young quarterbacks and in these big games. Week 7, teams should be finding themselves. Like this should be if you're not there yet, this is okay, we know what we are, we need to find the adjustment time, right? Like that's how teams typically go week 7 into week 8 or that bye week whenever they have it in the middle of the season. This is going to be another one where I think we're going to see Houston come out again, try to throw the football. I don't think they're going to be very run heavy, even though Bobby Slowick comes from that Kyle Shanahan tree. This is a lean into CJ Stroud offense, and it needs to be, especially when you acquire Stephon Diggs. So I think that we're going to see how are the Packers defense, how is it going to adapt throughout the season to week 7? Because obviously they're young on the defensive side as well. They've added multiple safeties, and I believe they went out and got Xavier McKinney this offseason. Then they drafted a safety as well. So there's some different areas that they're going to have to adjust to. But by week 7, we should know enough about Green Bay's defense if they're going to give them a shot to actually compete in a game like this where they're going to come out swinging and they're going to come out throwing the football. So I think this actually comes down to CJ Stroud versus the Green Bay defense to see who's actually going to win this football game. Obviously, it's May right now when we're talking about this, but that's how I kind of see this going.
No, 100%. And I think that Green Bay defense, man, just you want to see they spent a lot of – feel like they spent a lot of draft picks on the defensive side of the ball over the last decade and a half. Yep. It's time. You want to see them kind of take that step and be that elite level defense because they got playmakers on both sides of the ball and everything. So Jair Alexander, you brought in Xavier McKinney at safety. You got Quay Walker. You added Tyron Hopper. You added one of our guys, Adrian Cooper, right?
Adrian Cooper,
at the linebacker position. But you want to see what's going to happen with Lucas Van Ness by this time. Is he now kind of usurped and leapfrogged Preston Smith and everything off the edge? Rashawn Gary being able to get after the passer. I think the run game for Houston is going to be play action, set things up early, but then also be able to spread you out. In terms of 11 personnel, let's get all 3 of my wide receivers on the field. Let's find these matchups, right? And attack a secondary that is kind of revamped. Carrington Valentine, a guy I really liked 2 years ago coming out of Kentucky. Who is he going to match up with? Is you want to put him, because you probably want Jair on Stephon Diggs, right? Because that's essentially on paper, you would say he's the most talented, he's the most proven guy. But then that list leaves, all right, who's covering Tank Dell? Like we've seen this like story play out
Absolutely.
before, and with his ability to play the Z spot and play outside, like yeah, it could be, it could be something, and that's something that I'm really interested in seeing how it plays out overall. But this is a game, but I want to jump to a game a little bit earlier with the Texans, and that's Week 5, and this is a game where I say get back, and that's the Texans versus the Bills. The Bills coming in to Houston, and that's Stephon Diggs saying, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I heard a lot of talk saying it was my fault. The issues with the offense was me, blah blah blah, all that good stuff, right? All the headlines. I'm telling you now, I think this is the game where Bobby Slowick, C.J. Stroud, and even the other receivers are like, let's get Diggs going early. Let's get him going early, Dad, because I think this is one of those probably 12 target games, getting him matched up on some of these young corners and try to set the tone about what we can do, like and what you're gonna have to deal with, right? And then forcing them to try and double Diggs, and it's like, well, now I get to do whatever I want because I get to attack a Tank Dell, whether it's running, in breakers, deep double moves, whatever it is. And we've seen the clutch ability and the connection between him and C.J. Stroud. That's such a dangerous duo. But if you have Stephon Diggs cooking in the first half, Nico Collins getting his, run game being effective, it could be a long day for that Buffalo Bills defense, man.
Yeah, you look at the exodus, the mass exodus that happened in Buffalo this year. Like they realized, all right, we need to get younger, get these contracts off the books. Like we just don't have a choice. And Taron Johnson, Rasul Douglas, and Christian Benford are their starters at corner right now. I'll be very honest with you. You come in, you can't double anybody if you're Buffalo. You don't have that luxury because now we're talking about Cole Bishop and Taylor Rapp as your safeties. You don't have the safety net you had last year of a couple of years of the elite safety duo that you had. So things become different. You can't come in and say, hey, Stephon, you're not going to beat us today. That's not going to happen because if you do that, Tank Dell's going to take it for 60 or Nico Collins is going to dunk on someone down the field. So you have to match things up. So if you guys play fantasy and you have Stephon Diggs, you make sure you start him in week 5. Do it. Just set that right now because he's probably going to be the number one scorer at wide receiver in that week. I see it coming. It's so Stephon Diggs-esque to do that. And on the flip side, I think this is an opportunity for the Bills. In week 5, they'll figure out a month into the season, what are we? Look at our offense. Basically, this is going to focus around Keon Coleman, who is going to be their number one wide receiver. They've already said how the offense is going to flow through him if it's not the run game. Last year, we really saw Joe Brady get 12 personnel on the field and run the football. James Cook was extremely efficient last year at the end of the season. Drop passes aside, what they're able to do from a run perspective with Josh Allen in their power run game with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox is something to be worried about because it is elite. If they can continue to do that, that's where their bread is going to be buttered this year on offense. We know Josh Allen's a load on third and goal. Any type of situation is third and short, he's going to take it. So how are they going to adjust their mindset in the passing game? Because you have Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, and Khalil Shakir as your number 1, 2, and 3 wide receivers. That's going to take a little bit of an adjustment process for the offense because they're all new outside of Khalil Shakir. I love Khalil coming out of Boise State. He's a very underrated player. We kind of saw some flashes last year, but this is one of those offenses that transition. We actually saw them transition last year to the run game, which, like I was saying, that's good for them. They need that. So this year, I believe that, Josh Allen's great. He can throw the ball for 5,000 plus yards, but we might see them lean into the run a little bit more. And I think that's where this game becomes that little bit of a chess match because the Houston Texans run defense, I think, is good. But I think this offense has shown that you can have a good run defense and it's not going to matter. So how are they going to pick and choose their spots? Are they going to let James Cook just be efficient, which you should let him do, and just kind of go along with it? Or are they going to let Josh Allen throw the ball? So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Man, I'm with you, and I think it's definitely getting Dawson Kincaid going is going to be big for
Oh yeah,
for that offense, and then Keon Coleman factoring him in as the X receiver. This offense, by the time we get to week 5, 6, and 7 for Buffalo, we should be seeing that kind of evolution with Joe Brady and how he envisions things going. But let's jump to week 9, the Atlanta Falcons versus the Dallas Cowboys, man, and that's going to be a really fun game. I think with Kirk Cousins, barring any unforeseen circumstances, he should be the starter. But, now with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, they got Rondale Moore. They brought in some more receivers and everything like that. I'm excited to see, of course, Bijan Robinson, right? Getting him going against this defense. And for a team that still hasn't fully addressed the linebacker position in Dallas, like that's going to be they're going to be their Achilles heel, the linebacker position and the interior defensive line. If Mozzie Smith is back up to being that 320, 330 that he was, at the combine and at Michigan, like that's going to help their run defense, right? And whoever's playing linebackers, if you bring back safeties that aren't good safeties and you put them at linebacker, like, I think Marquise Ball, or Bell, the young kid out of the HBCU, you got to protect them so that, with the front line, that they can then make plays, man. But you got these guys who are not traditional linebackers trying to fight through blocks and everything else. Like that's tough. Like just overall, that's extremely tough and something that you can't really, deal with. But the matchup I'm looking for in that game, AJ Terrell and CD Lamb. And CD moves around so much, man. He plays so much in the slot. He does play out wide. But, for them, and it depends, man. Like, will they let AJ Terrell travel from left to right? He typically does on the outside. Do you want him in the nickel spot a ton? And you know what I mean? And, that's going to be a very dangerous situation. I think Atlanta's pass rush, right? Like, because by the time this is week 9, Tyler Guyton to have 8 weeks and the preseason and training camp of reps at left tackle. And this, I'm telling you right now, guys, they're already saying that Cooper Beebe's taking snaps at center. So this offensive line could look like Tyler Guyton on the left, Tyler Smith at left guard, Cooper Beebe at center, Zach Martin at right guard, and then Terrence Steele, who I would say probably is he's a solid tackle, hasn't been the same since he got hurt. But still, you're talking about a physical offensive line, run game. That's going to be, what's the phrase? Immovable. What is it? Unstoppable force and immovable object.
Force and immovable object. Yeah.
Like because you have a defensive line with Ruka Rororo, Brandon Dorless, David Onyemata, and Grady Jarrett for the Atlanta Falcons. This is going to be a fun matchup.
This is like what you want in week 9, in my opinion, because I think that the only reason you bring in Kirk Cousins is because you figure by week 9, week 10, okay, he's fully healthy, he's good to go. That's why I picked out this game, because I think that this is the point in time where you can hope that Kirk Cousins is back to fully healthy. And I mean, everything else aside with Atlanta taking a quarterback in the first round, like they had opportunities to improve their defense, and they decided that they were going to take some stabs on players on day 2, which I have no issues with. I think Braylon Trice is going to provide some interesting aspects for them. I think he probably can become a 3-down player for them. I have no real, because I don't have concerns about Lorenzo Carter being that guy for the Falcons. He's more of a placeholder until Braylon Trice gets up to speed, in my opinion. Then you've got Ruka Rororo, like you said. They have a lot of influx of talent, too. David Onyemata comes in. We talked about Lorenzo Carter, but they have like no real pass rushers still. It's Grady Jarrett. Like that's what it is. And they say, okay, Brandon Dorless, okay, a tweener. Ruka Rororo, a tweener. I'm trying to figure out the process here for the Falcons defense, because Arnold Ebiketie is fine. He's a fine player, but he also does not have that pass rush toolbox. So are we just going to sit here and say, on 3rd down, we're just going to try really hard? Like, we're just going to try really hard because you don't have a true difference maker as a pass rusher. So I understand that might hurt your feelings, Falcons fans, but look at the roster. It's not there. So, and you're going against a Dak Prescott on contract year. Contract year Dak Prescott. He's not getting a contract with the Cowboys, in my opinion. I don't think he's getting it. So with you when you have a guy who can run a bunch of different offenses who's younger than everyone thinks he is. He's like 29 years old. And that's like he's been in the league forever, but he's like still entering his prime as a quarterback. So you have, like, you talk about this offensive line, and then you have Zeke and you have Rico Dowdle, which, okay, fine. I
Yep.
think Zeke's going to be probably still pretty serviceable. But what we've seen last year with Dak is the 1-2 punch here is CeeDee Lamb and then Jake Ferguson. That's what this is. He wants seam balls to Jake Ferguson.
Mm.
He wants to just get the matchup with CeeDee Lamb. That's what this is. Another, I think he's about to get paid, but it could be contract year CeeDee Lamb too. Let's not forget. You could have Dak Prescott contract year throwing to a contract year CeeDee Lamb. That is going to be a lot of fun to watch because they're going to rack up a ton of stuff. And there's a player that I'm interested in seeing because they did not adjust the wide receiver room at all. It is CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, and Jalen Tolbert. So this is a Jalen Tolbert versus Ryan Flournoy. Like, that's what this is in terms of what this could be. So they need to have one of these other tight ends, Luke Schoonmaker, Peyton Hendershot, step up to be a legitimate process or part of the process for their offense. Because outside of Brandon Cooks, who still showed he could play, there's no other proven receivers on this roster. So there's going to be opportunities there. I'm very excited to see these players and Dak Prescott playing for money because that's how you get like the best out of Dak Prescott and the best out of CeeDee Lamb. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
No, 100%. And CeeDee Lamb stepping into that elite tier wide receiver role last
Yeah,
year, man. I'm gonna throw one more game out there, and then we're gonna close this thing out. You know what I mean? Having such a great time. We could talk for hours, dude. But let's
always.
let's go to Week 15, and this is a game I think is very interesting. I know it's not two playoff caliber teams in a lot of people's minds, but the New England Patriots going into Arizona to face the Cardinals. I think this could be one of those games where we see Kyler Murray versus Drake May. And not only that, but just the young matchups in this game, right? Where you might see their third round pick, Caden Wallace. He might be starting at left tackle
Yeah,
versus a BJ Ojulari, right? Where you might have Michael Owenahue at right tackle facing Darius Robinson, the first round pick defensive tackle, defensive end for the Arizona Cardinals out of Missouri. But the matchup I'm excited for, just thinking about it, Marvin Harrison Jr. versus Christian Gonzalez. Like Week 15, both these guys are in their prime. You feel the chills of that matchup, Dan. Like of getting an elite caliber wide receiver talent versus an elite cover corner and talent at the cover corner's position. And I mean, even especially in what I got to highlight, Christian Barmore is one of the better interior defensive
yes,
linemen. That's why he got paid. And for a
yeah,
team with Drew Petzinger, I think I keep saying his name wrong, but whatever. The OC from the Cardinals, I love what he's brought: a attitude, a smash mouth physicality type of vibe and process to their run game with James Conner and then Trey Benson. Yeah, my guy Christian Barmore is going to be really big of trying to set a standard and set the tone of not giving them anything running between the tackles, right? But with Kyler Murray, Trey McBride getting matched up probably against oh man, Kyle Duggar. Like those would be
yeah.
some really fun one-on-one battles at the safety and tight end position. Man, Michael Wilson probably against like Alex Austin and some of the other corners that they have. Like this will be a fun game to me because both teams be in their rhythm, in their element. You know what they are, they know their identity, right, and everything like that. But this is a game that I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on.
Man, I think at this point we're going to see Javon Baker and Jalen Polk as your starters with probably Demario Douglas out there as well. Like that's how I envision the offense going. And I don't think you should let Kendrick Bourne be a starter for the whole season because while he did get re-signed, the future is Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Unless Javon
Yeah.
Baker is just not picking up the offense, which I'm going to have a hard time believing because he's just a straight dog. You want him playing at this point up to speed, especially if it is Drake May. You want him playing with Jacoby Brissett as much as he can, getting up to speed there. And on the flip side with the Cardinals, you talked about Drew Petzing having the offense being more physical, run downhill. When they drafted Trey Benson, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is just like hyped up James Conner. It's James Conner with a speed boost on the back. Like that's how I
4.39.
envision that's how I envision him playing. And this offensive line, Jonah Williams is going to be back to playing left tackle, where the best of his career was before he had his down year and then flipped to right tackle in Cincinnati, which I don't know. I'm interested to see what's going to happen there. But outside of Paris Johnson, they don't have any other draft picks on this offensive line. So it has just been finding guys who Freuholt is a very good center. That is a 100% stud of a center that you guys should go watch him play. I know it's not fun to watch center play. It's
They
fun to
have to
watch this
resign him
dude play.
too. He's on an extended on an
Yeah.
expiring contract. They got to resign him because he played well last year.
Yes, he did. And I think he's going to play well again this year. And that's those contract bonuses, like those contract signings. And when you're in contract years, this offense is going to be fun. You and me are on the same page with the Arizona Cardinals. They're going to be one of the most feisty teams in the NFL with a healthy Kyler Murray. Yes, they bring in Zay Jones. Fine. He's going to be your wide receiver too, most likely. I don't see Greg Dortch being a starter. I don't see Michael Wilson beating out Zay Jones. I don't. I think you're going to Michael Wilson will play with Zay Jones and Marvin Harrison. But you have the stud wide receiver now in Marvin Harrison, who's going to be what DeAndre Hopkins was for Kyler Murray. We saw the magic that they made. That's probably what it's going to look like to an extent, but those play action passes coming out of that game. And then with the defensive side, I'm very interested with the Arizona Cardinals because what Jonathan Gannon did last year, I'll be very honest, I wasn't buying into Jonathan Gannon. I wasn't. I didn't
me either.
believe.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I didn't believe that they were going to be a good team. And then you watch the Josh Dobbs-led Arizona Cardinals, and you're like, okay,
He got
there's
those
something
guys
here.
to buy in. He got them to buy in early.
Everybody. It wasn't just the offense. It was the defense, which is made up of, like you said, that you have now 2 first and second round picks, and Darius Robinson and Max Melton are going to probably be starters for you. But you just kind of throw bodies at the defensive side, and then young, like you said, with BJ Ojolari, Zach. Zaven Collins, we're going to kind of see what that is, but that's one of those linebacker tweeners that you're trying to fit him now on the defensive line and figure that out. So you still have Budda Baker. You bring in Sean Murphy Bunting. You're hoping just to get kind of competent play out of these players this year. Draft a defensive player high because the 2025 class is defensive heavy. It's going to be a very good defensive class. So if you have something on offense here with the Cardinals and you still have Kyler Murray throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., you got something there. You can go to the defensive side and bring in some legitimate playmakers, and then you're cooking with gas a little bit there. So this matchup, not only are we talking about these young teams, these now young coaches, Gerard Mayo and Gannon, it's a very fun, futuristic matchup here in Week 15.
No, 100%, man. I'm excited for a lot of young matchups in this game.
Yeah.
Offensive line, D line, cornerback, receiver, handling run defense and lane integrity and everything. This is going to be a fun match. Like I said, Week 15, you know who you are. You're into your rhythm. You know your identity, and that is the best part of football. And that's the best football to watch is when teams know who they are and they're operating and they're clicking on all cylinders. And I expect no matter what their records are going to be, I expect both of these teams to be clicking on all cylinders by Week 15 with just 3 weeks left in the regular season. But guys, listen, that is the first episode here at the Scouting Room with me, Damian Parson, my guy, Daniel Harms, man. Listen, you already know where you can find us on Twitter at DP_NFL in Harm's Way. Is any numbers there? I always mess that up.
19. In Harm's Way 19.
In Harm's Way 19. So you follow us on there, subscribe, like, comment, talk to us. How do you think? Tell us about some of your favorite matchups for your favorite teams. You know what we're going to do, Dan? Next time we come back, we're going to pick some teams. And we're going to pull up, I think it's a playoff website, and we're going to go through the schedule right now, just before injuries, so we can start picking teams and do their win-loss record heading into the season. We'll have some fun with that, guys. So, listen, as always, man, appreciate y'all. Like I said, go like, subscribe, and share this YouTube channel, comment, and hit the bell notification because we got a lot of fire content coming. So, stay tuned, and remember, come back to the Scouting Room.